Good morning, everyone. My name is Richard Norman. I'm sorry I'm late this morning, but I couldn't think of anything to say. It reminds me of an old Dagwood Bumstead cartoon where he was reading the Sunday morning paper and there was a little boy standing by him, and the little boy just stood there and looked at him for time after time in that cartoon. Uh, and Finally, Dagwood said, "Why don't you ever say anything, Elwood?" And the little boy thought about it for a minute, and then he said, "I never can think of anything to say." That was kind of my problem this morning. Anyway, I thought it's been a very long life, and I should have many, many things to say, but uh, I think so many things are very ordinary and common among people. I'm just an ordinary person like anybody else. Uh, but there are things that I do remember in time that I thought might be of some interest to you today. And if, for example, uh, I remember when I was a very small child that my mother would give me a nickel and tell me to go down to the corner grocery store and buy a quart of milk. Can you think of a time when you could buy a quart of milk for a nickel, paid a dime for a loaf of bread, went to movies for a dime? And those were some good old days. It was a different world when I grew up. I grew up in a time of extreme racial prejudice. Uh, and I remember uh, the riots and the time of the uh, trying to integrate uh, the races. And that was in 1955. I was 25 years old, had a child by then. And so I was part of the problem. And I had to change my thinking because of the way I was raised. And it was not easy to do, I'm sorry to say. But I do remember days back then we had revival meetings at church. And when we would have a revival, sometimes people would come to our services. Our churches were segregated back then. But when I saw those black Christians there, I was about, I think maybe 11 years old when this occurred to me. I wondered why we were segregated. If they were Christians and we were Christians, we were brothers and sisters. And from then on, I realized that prejudice had separated the races and that it was not right at all. And then I remember my grandfather. We lived in his home, when I was a small child. He would get up at 6 o'clock or before 6 o'clock, probably around 5:30, and get his bath. We didn't have showers in those days. We had an old clawfoot tub, and he would take his bath and get dressed. And he was very loud when he had a big, loud voice, and he woke everybody in the house when he got up. Even when I was a baby, uh, he would wake me up. He was so loud. And he loved to sing hymns, Christian hymns. And he had a big singing voice. And he really belted out those hymns and sang. He was very happy and jovial all the time, every single morning. And so I woke up. My mother would open my bedroom door, and she would whisper my name, and she called me Dick. And I would wake up immediately. She just had to whisper my name, and my eyes would pop over, and I would jump out of bed and run to the bathroom and wash my face and comb my hair and get dressed and go to the dining table. And we would all sit around the dining table for breakfast every morning. We had bacon and eggs and toast and coffee and sometimes biscuits and gravy. We had it all. And my grandfather insisted we have breakfast together every morning. And so by the time I was in high school, nobody had to wake me. My eyes would pop open at 6 o'clock every morning. I never heard of anybody sleeping in past 6 o'clock. Nobody in our house slept late, not even my great grandmother. She came to breakfast as well. And so after I married, I had such a habit of waking up at 7 o'clock. I didn't even need an alarm clock. I would just wake up. And it wasn't too long after we married that I decided I would get up an hour earlier than my wife or my kids, and I would spend a little quiet time of my own reading my Bible every morning. And I have been doing that ever since, and even today. But anyway, I am a morning person. I go to bed early and get up early. The saying is, early to bed, early to rise, makes a man healthy, wealthy, and wise. Well, maybe 2 out of 3 ain't bad. I never got wealthy, and I'm not sure how wise I am, but I did learn a few things in life. And then there were many other memories of things that happened in history that you might be interested in. I was 11 years old when World War II began, and I certainly remember that vividly. And in the movie theaters, they had not only the movie, but they had newsreels because we didn't have television. The news was on radio, but there were photographers that went over there and made films of the war. And they showed those war films in the movies regularly. And so I saw a lot of the battles, and I saw a lot of the atrocities. I saw piles of dead bodies in Germany of Jews. And it was over when I was 15. So I did not go to that war. When Korea came along, I was to be drafted, and they sent me a notice And on it, it said, one of the questions was, have you ever had asthma? Well, I had it very bad as a child, but I outgrew it. And so I didn't have it anymore, but I said I had asthma as a child. I wrote that on the form and sent it in, and I was 4F. I didn't have to go to Korea. I've never been in the service. And then I remember when computers were first invented around the early 1950s. I was working in a bank in Dallas in 1952, and they got computers in that bank, and they were enormous machines, and they would fill a very, very large room with those machines, computer machines. And they had to keep that very cold in that place where they were, because they got heat. They were very hot, and they would get very hot. And so I remember when they were invented. And then I was also living in Dallas when John F. Kennedy was killed. In fact, just before he went down that hill and was shot, I was in the crowd watching the parade, and I saw him go by, and then I saw him go down. But I didn't know what happened until I got home, and I had to go to the grocery store, and I heard on the radio over the speaker that he was shot and killed, and I couldn't believe it. But I remember those days. I lived in Dallas when that happened, and I remember all of those events very vividly. Then I also remember when well, I'm trying to think now. When Martin Luther King was killed, I was living in Dallas at that time. And I remember when I'm sorry. I was trying to think of things that happened in history that I remember growing up, because the world has really changed very much since I was a child. America used to be called a Christian nation. It was formed by religious people who came over here for religious freedom. And that was what America was all about, was religious freedom in the beginning. But that's not very popular anymore. There are people that want to outlaw religion completely, at least the Christian religion. But I guess that's enough for today. And I couldn't think of a song to sing today. I did sing Let There Be Peace on Earth, but I did that on my karaoke site. And I wish I could sing it here, but I'm not sure I know the words. Anyway, that'll have to do for today, and I'll see if I can think of something else to tell you tomorrow. Thank you if you listen, and if I bore you, I'm sorry. But until next time, this is Richard Norman. Goodbye.